man works for 20 years, saving diligently, building up investments, buying a home, and thinking that his financial foundation is unshakable. Yet in the span of just a few months, a medical emergency drains his savings, a sudden layoff ends his steady paycheck, and the stock market wipes out a good portion of his retirement account. What once seemed like wealth turns to dust, slipping through his fingers as if it were sand in an open hand. This is not a rare story. All around us are families who appeared secure, houses paid for, businesses running, accounts full. Yet one wave of misfortune was enough to sweep away decades of effort. The question we must ask ourselves is simple but piercing. Why do so many people look wealthy on paper, yet collapse when a single crisis arrives? And perhaps more importantly, what can be done to make sure we are not the next story whispered in hushed tones of regret? Financial risk management is not about feeding fear. It is about peace of mind. It is about protecting the life you have worked so hard to build, so that when the storms come, and they will come, you do not lose everything. Imagine your financial life as a house on the coast. The view may be beautiful, the walls strong, but without storm shutters and deep foundations, the next hurricane could leave you in ruins. Preparing is not paranoia, it is wisdom. In this audiobook, you will explore the shields that guard against life's unpredictable blows. You will learn about building an emergency fund, about the true role of insurance, about spreading investments wisely, and about taming the dangers of debt before they spiral into disaster. You will come to see that real financial security is not found in how much you make or how big your house is, but in how resilient your foundations are when tested. Take a moment right now, as you listen, to reflect. What if you faced a sudden loss of income tomorrow? What if an illness arrived without warning, demanding treatment that insurance didn't fully cover? Would your family stand steady? Or would you watch years of progress vanish in weeks? As you think on that, I want to invite you to engage with this journey more deeply. Drop a comment below, sharing where and when you are listening to this audiobook. It is always powerful to see how people from different places and times come together in this shared pursuit of wisdom. And if you have not already, subscribe to Audiobook Sanctuary and turn on the notifications so you never miss the next story that could help you protect and strengthen your future. The truth is this: many people never imagine the worst will happen to them until it does. They keep chasing more income, more investments, more possessions, without ever pausing to ask, am I protected? They become rich on paper, but fragile in reality. And when the storm arrives, as it inevitably does, they find themselves like a sailor with a magnificent ship but no lifeboat, no map, and no compass. But here is the good news. You are listening right now, which means you are already ahead of the majority. You are aware, and awareness is the first step toward resilience. By the time you finish this audiobook, you will carry with you not just knowledge, but practical tools, tested wisdom, and a mindset that refuses to be caught off guard. History itself is filled with stories of fortunes built and lost. In the Great Depression of the 1930s, countless families who owned thriving businesses and comfortable homes were left destitute almost overnight. Banks closed, jobs vanished, and investment portfolios crumbled. Yet not everyone lost everything. Those who had spread their risks, those who had cash reserves, and those who had managed debt carefully, stood a far better chance of surviving and even rebuilding afterward. Their stories remind us that while we cannot stop the storm, we can prepare the shelter. Think also of the 2008 financial crisis. Entire corporations collapsed, millions lost jobs, and retirement savings shrank by half. But the individuals who had safeguarded themselves with emergency funds, who avoided high-risk debts, and who held diversified assets did not just survive. They found opportunities in the chaos. The lesson is timeless. Wealth without protection is fragile, but wealth with foresight becomes a fortress. So as we step deeper into this journey, hold on to this truth. It is not how much money you make that secures you, but how well you prepare for what could go wrong. The first step is to recognize the risks themselves, because you cannot defend against what you refuse to see, and that is where we now turn. We will open the curtain on life's financial storms, illness, unemployment, failed investments, and global crises, and explore how each can strike unexpectedly. By seeing them clearly, you will begin to understand the necessity of building the shields that follow. Picture a calm, sunny day. The sea looks peaceful, the sky is clear, and sailors begin to believe the weather will stay this way forever. Yet anyone who has lived near the ocean knows storms can roll in fast, turning tranquility into chaos within hours. Personal finance is much the same. Most of the time, life moves smoothly. Paychecks arrive, bills get paid, investments grow. But the storms are always out there, just beyond the horizon, waiting for their moment. To prepare wisely, we must first recognize the storms most likely to strike. One of the most common and devastating is illness. A sudden diagnosis can upend not just health, but also finances. In the United States, medical expenses are a leading cause of bankruptcy. Families who thought they were secure find themselves drowning in bills that insurance doesn't fully cover. Imagine a household where the main breadwinner suffers a heart attack. Hospital stays, surgeries, medications, these quickly escalate into tens of thousands of dollars. Income halts, but expenses skyrocket. Without preparation, years of saving can evaporate in a matter of months. Another storm comes in the form of job loss. Companies restructure, industries shift, or unexpected downturns force layoffs. You may remember the shock of 2020 when the global pandemic shuttered businesses overnight. Millions of people suddenly found themselves without work. Even those with strong resumes discovered that finding a new job took longer than expected. Bills didn't stop just because paychecks did. For those who had no backup, the stress was unbearable. For those with a cushion, there was hardship but also breathing space. Failed investments are another source of financial collapse. Think of the tech bubble in the early 2000s or the housing crash of 2008. Many investors believed their assets were untouchable, only to watch them crumble. There were stories of retirees whose life savings disappeared when the stock market fell. Some had invested everything into a single company or a single property. They were left exposed because they assumed tomorrow would look just like today. The storm proved them wrong. And then there are global crises, events that ripple across the world, touching every household in ways few anticipate. Wars, pandemics, and economic recessions have shown us that no one is immune. In 2022, when global energy prices spiked due to geopolitical tensions, even families far from the conflict felt the squeeze in higher costs of living. Grocery bills rose, gas prices climbed, and savings stretched thin. The storm wasn't personal, but it was universal. It is easy to believe these events happened to other people. Yet history shows that eventually, everyone encounters at least one major disruption. The specifics differ. Some face medical bills, others unemployment, others a market crash, but the pattern is clear. Life carries risk. The question is not if, but when the storm will come. Consider the story of a man named Robert, a small business owner in Ohio. For years, his store did well. He invested profits back into inventory and expanded his space. On paper, he was thriving. Then a regional recession struck. Sales plummeted, his business loans came due, and customers stopped spending. Within 6 months, the business folded. Robert later admitted, "I thought the good times would last forever. I never thought about protecting myself against the bad." His story is a cautionary tale for all of us. On the other hand, take the story of Maria, a nurse in California. She too faced unexpected hardship when she was diagnosed with cancer. The treatment was long and costly, but Maria had built a modest emergency fund and maintained solid health insurance. While the illness was still a battle, she didn't lose her home, her retirement savings, or her peace of mind. "I could focus on healing," she said, "because I knew I wouldn't be ruined financially." Maria's foresight turned a devastating diagnosis into a survivable season. Recognizing these risks is not meant to paralyze us with fear. It is meant to open our eyes so that we can act with wisdom. Just as a sailor studies the weather, just as a farmer prepares for drought, so must we acknowledge the financial storms that may touch our lives. Pretending they don't exist leaves us vulnerable. Accepting them makes us strong. The truth is, you already know some of the risks in your own life. If you rely on a single paycheck, you are vulnerable to job loss. If you have ongoing health concerns, you know medical costs could escalate. If all your investments sit in one basket, you know a single downturn could sweep them away. Awareness is the seed of preparation, and preparation begins with the first shield. Before you think about insurance policies or investments, you need the simplest and most powerful form of protection, an emergency fund. This is your lifeboat, your first line of defense when storms hit. It doesn't prevent the storm, but it keeps you afloat until calmer waters return. In the next section, we will explore why an emergency fund is not a luxury, but a necessity, and how ordinary people have used it to transform crises into manageable challenges. Imagine standing in front of your home as dark clouds gather overhead. You don't know when the rain will fall, but you feel it in the air, the pressure changing, the wind picking up. Do you wait and hope for the best, or do you reach for the umbrella and close the windows before the storm arrives? In personal finance, the umbrella that shields you from life's first downpour is the emergency fund. An emergency fund is not an investment. It is not meant to grow wealth or beat inflation. Its purpose is simple but profound: to provide immediate liquidity when life turns upside down. Think of it as the cash cushion that catches you when you fall, allowing you to land softly instead of hitting the ground with full force. Without it, even a small disruption can become a disaster. Consider the story of Daniel, a young father who worked as a mechanic. When the factory where he worked closed suddenly, he lost his paycheck overnight. But Daniel had set aside 6 months of living expenses in a savings account. That emergency fund became a bridge between one job and the next. His family continued paying rent, keeping food on the table and covering medical bills. There was stress, but no collapse. Contrast that with his co-worker, Michael, who had no savings. Within 2 months, Michael was behind on rent, selling possessions, and borrowing money at high interest just to survive. The difference was not income, but preparation. So, how much should one set aside? Financial experts often recommend 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses. Essential means the basics: housing, utilities, food, transportation, and insurance. For families with unstable income or more dependents, 6 to 12 months may be wiser. It is not about the exact number, but about building enough runway to withstand temporary storms without being forced into bad decisions. Emergency funds must be accessible. This is not money to tie up in long-term certificates or volatile stocks. It belongs in safe, liquid places, savings accounts, money market accounts, or short-term deposits. Some people resist because the returns are low. But remember, this is not an investment. It is protection. You don't judge an umbrella by whether it makes money. You judge it by whether it keeps you dry. There is also a psychological strength that comes with having a fund. Knowing you have months of expenses covered reduces anxiety. It quiets the constant fear of what if. Studies show that financial stress is one of the leading causes of marital conflict and personal unhappiness. Yet couples who build an emergency fund report feeling more unified, more secure, more confident in facing life's uncertainties. The fund doesn't just protect money, it protects peace of mind. The power of the emergency fund can be seen in history as well. During the 2008 financial crisis, many households saw their incomes fall or disappear. Yet surveys afterward showed that those with even modest emergency savings fared significantly better than those with none. They delayed debt, kept homes longer, and had a higher chance of recovery once the economy stabilized. The fund didn't solve every problem, but it bought them time. And time is the most precious resource during a crisis. Building an emergency fund takes discipline. It rarely happens overnight. For many, the idea of saving 3 to 6 months of expenses feels impossible, but it begins with small steps. Setting aside a portion of each paycheck, even if just 5% or 10%. Over time, the habit compounds. Like drops filling a bucket, consistency turns scarcity into sufficiency. Some people automate transfers to a separate account to remove temptation. Others treat the fund as a non-negotiable bill, paying themselves first before spending on anything else. The key is to start. Too often people delay, waiting until after the debt is paid, or once the next raise comes. But life's storms don't wait for convenience. Start with 1 month's worth of expenses, then aim for 3, then stretch towards 6. Each step adds resilience. Think of the emergency fund as your financial lifeboat. It may not be glamorous, but when the ship takes on water, it is the difference between panic and survival. And once that lifeboat is secure, you can begin to build the next layer of defense. Walls strong enough to withstand bigger storms. That is where insurance comes in. Imagine walking through a neighborhood after a hurricane. Some houses stand almost untouched, their windows intact, their roofs solid. Others are in ruins, shattered glass, collapsed walls, belongings scattered across the street. From the outside, before the storm, every home looked strong. But what made the difference was not how beautiful the paint was, or how large the rooms were. It was how well those homes were fortified. In our financial lives, that fortification comes in the form of insurance. Insurance is often misunderstood. Some see it as an unnecessary expense, a drain on monthly income, something to skip when money feels tight. But in reality, insurance is one of the most powerful shields you can build. It does not prevent misfortune, but it transfers the financial weight of misfortune away from you, ensuring that a single event does not wipe out everything you have worked for. Health insurance is perhaps the most critical. In the United States, medical costs can be astronomical. A single surgery can cost more than a new car, a prolonged illness more than a house. Without coverage, even middle-class families are pushed into bankruptcy. Think of Linda, a mother of 2 who faced breast cancer. Because she had strong health insurance, she focused on treatment and recovery. The bills were daunting, but most were covered. Her family stayed in their home. Her children stayed in school, and financial ruin was avoided. Contrast that with stories of families who lacked coverage and found themselves forced to choose between paying for medicine and paying for rent. The illness was hard enough. The financial devastation made it unbearable. Life insurance is another pillar, especially for those with dependents. It is not about you. It is about the people who rely on you. Imagine a father of young children who passes unexpectedly. Without life insurance, the family could lose their home, their education plans, their stability. But with it, the grief is not compounded by financial collapse. Life insurance is a final act of love, ensuring that your absence does not translate into their despair. Property insurance, covering homes, cars, and valuable possessions, forms the next layer. Fires, floods, accidents, and thefts can strike anyone. Without protection, rebuilding is nearly impossible. With it, recovery is difficult but manageable. After natural disasters, news stories often highlight those who were underinsured or uninsured. Their pain is not just in what was lost, but in the realization that a small monthly payment could have preserved years of effort. Insurance is like building walls around your financial house. An emergency fund may cover the smaller leaks and cracks, but insurance is the structure that holds strong when the storm grows violent. Without it, even a 6-month savings account may be drained in weeks. With it, you are not alone in the fight. There is also the question of mindset. Many people gamble with risk, believing it won't happen to me. They see insurance as wasted money when nothing goes wrong. But this thinking is like refusing to wear a seatbelt because you haven't had an accident yet. The point is not whether you use it often, but whether it protects you when the one critical moment arrives. The story of the Chicago fire in 1871 is a powerful reminder. Entire blocks of the city burned to the ground. Businesses that had insurance rebuilt and rose again. Those without disappeared forever. One fire, one night, one choice about insurance made the difference between survival and extinction. Of course, insurance must be chosen wisely. Not every policy is worth the cost, and not every add-on is necessary. The goal is not to over-insure, but to protect against catastrophic loss, the kinds of blows that would sink you if faced alone. This is why health, life, and property insurance form the core. They address the storms most likely to devastate a family. When you carry adequate insurance, you do more than buy protection. You buy peace of mind. You remove the constant background fear that one accident, one diagnosis, one misstep could destroy everything. That peace is not just financial. It is emotional, relational, and even physical. Stress drops when protection rises. With the first shield, your emergency fund, you bought yourself time. With the second shield, insurance, you build walls that stand against disaster. But there is a third shield you must not ignore: the wisdom of spreading your assets so that no single blow can cripple you. That shield is diversification, and it is there that we now turn. Picture a farmer who plants all his seeds in a single field. The soil looks rich, the weather favorable, and the harvest promises abundance. Yet if a pest infestation strikes that field, or if drought hits that patch of land, his entire livelihood is lost. Another farmer, however, spreads his seeds across several plots. Different crops, different conditions. When one field fails, another still thrives. This timeless lesson of agriculture is also the law of finance. Diversification is the third shield that protects wealth. Diversification is simple in principle. Do not place all your eggs in one basket. Yet time and again, history shows us how many people ignore this wisdom. They invest every dollar into one stock, one property, or one type of business. believing that success will last forever. And then the storm comes. Take the example of the dot-com bubble in the late 1990s. Many investors believed internet companies would grow without limits. People poured their savings into a handful of tech stocks. When the bubble burst in 2000, billions of dollars vanished. Retirements were destroyed, dreams postponed indefinitely. Those who had diversified, holding bonds, real estate, or traditional businesses alongside tech, suffered losses, but they survived. Their wealth did not evaporate in a single night. Or consider the 2008 housing crisis. Families believed property values would only rise. Some put nearly all their resources into real estate, sometimes borrowing heavily to own multiple homes. When the market collapsed, so did their fortunes. Meanwhile, those with balanced portfolios, cash reserves, diversified investments, and less reliance on property alone, absorbed the shock and eventually rebuilt faster. Diversification is not just about investments, though that is where it is most often discussed. It is also about income. Relying on a single source of earnings, one job, one business, one client, creates vulnerability. If that source dries up, your livelihood halts. But those with multiple streams of income, a side business, freelance work, investments producing dividends, stand stronger. They are like rivers fed by many springs. If one spring runs dry, the river still flows. At its heart, diversification is about spreading risk. It acknowledges that no one can predict the future with certainty. Even the most stable companies can falter, the strongest industries can collapse, and the most secure economies can face crisis. By dividing your resources, you accept smaller potential gains in exchange for far greater security. It is the difference between gambling everything on one roll of the dice and playing the game with balance and foresight. Imagine Sarah, a teacher who saved steadily. Instead of putting all her retirement funds into stocks, she spread them across bonds, index funds, and a modest rental property. When the stock market dipped, her bonds held value. When property values wavered, her stocks recovered. Her wealth did not skyrocket, but it did not collapse either. Steady and balanced, she grew more secure each year. Diversification is also a safeguard against our own blind spots. Human beings are naturally optimistic about their own choices. We tend to believe that the stock we pick, the business we start, or the property we buy will perform better than average. Diversification humbles that optimism. It admits that we might be wrong, and it protects us from the full cost of being wrong. There is also the lesson of time. Diversification is not just about spreading across different assets in the present. It is also about spreading across different seasons of life. Short-term savings, medium-term investments, and long-term retirement accounts each serve a role. When balanced, they ensure that you have resources ready not just for today, but for tomorrow and decades beyond. Consider the ancient proverb from the book of Ecclesiastes. Divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. Thousands of years ago, wise people already understood this truth. Diversification is not modern financial theory. It is timeless human wisdom. Of course, diversification does not mean scattering blindly. It is not about buying every product on the market or spreading so thin that returns disappear. It is about intentional balance, holding assets that do not all move in the same direction, building income from different sources, and keeping cash available for emergencies. Like a well-designed fortress, it is not one wall alone, but many that create true protection. By now, you see how the shields fit together. The emergency fund is your lifeboat, keeping you afloat in sudden crises. Insurance is your wall, protecting you from catastrophic events. Diversification is your architecture, ensuring that even if one part falls, the whole does not collapse. Together, they form a powerful defense, but there is another storm we must address, one that does not come from outside, but from within. Debt, when left unmanaged, becomes the hidden crack in the foundation. It grows silently, unnoticed at first, until one day the entire structure gives way. That is where we must turn next. The art of taming the debt trap before it destroys everything. Debt is like fire. Controlled, it warms your home, cooks your food, and fuels progress. Left unchecked, it rages through your life, burning everything in its path. In personal finance, debt can be both a useful tool and a silent destroyer. When managed with care, it helps buy homes, fund education, and start businesses. But when ignored or misused, it becomes a chain that tightens slowly, turning freedom into bondage. Think of the 2008 crisis again. Families with massive mortgages found themselves trapped when housing prices collapsed. Suddenly, their homes were worth less than what they owed, and foreclosure loomed. Many had taken on debt under the assumption that tomorrow would always be brighter than today. But debt magnifies risk. When income drops or markets crash, payments remain. What once seemed like leverage becomes a noose. The trap often begins innocently. A credit card swiped here, a car loan taken there, a student loan signed without a second thought. Each piece feels manageable in isolation, but combined, they form a web that steals flexibility. A job loss, a medical bill, or even a missed paycheck can trigger a cascade. Late fees, penalties, rising interest, damaged credit, and growing stress. Debt rarely destroys in one sudden blow. It erodes steadily, like water seeping into cracks until the structure collapses. Consider James, a marketing professional in his 40s. He lived comfortably, but each comfort was financed. A large mortgage, 2 car loans, several credit cards, all justified by the steady paycheck he earned. Then came an unexpected layoff. With no emergency fund and no diversified income, James could not keep up with the payments. Within a year, his home was gone, his credit ruined, his peace shattered. His story is not unique. It is the reality of countless households living too close to the edge. Now contrast that with Elaine, a school teacher who used debt sparingly. She kept her mortgage modest, avoided car loans, and paid credit card balances in full each month. When her husband faced a medical emergency, the bills were high, but their lack of debt gave them room to maneuver. They leaned on their emergency fund and their insurance without the crushing weight of monthly obligations. Stress was present, but collapse was avoided. Elaine's restraint created resilience. Managing debt wisely begins with awareness. Too often, people live in denial, refusing to add up the true total they owe. Facing the numbers may feel uncomfortable, but it is the first step toward freedom. Like a doctor diagnosing illness, clarity is necessary before healing begins. From there, strategies must follow. One proven method is the avalanche approach, paying down high-interest debt first while maintaining minimum payments on the rest. This reduces the overall cost of borrowing. Another is the snowball approach, paying off the smallest debts first to build momentum and psychological victory. Both methods work. The key is consistent discipline. Equally important is avoiding unnecessary debt altogether. Not all loans are created equal. Borrowing for education that increases earning potential or for a home within your means can be strategic. But borrowing for vacations, luxury items, or status symbols is financial self-sabotage. Every debt should be weighed not only by its cost, but by its purpose. Does it build future strength, or does it consume present comfort at tomorrow's expense? Debt management also requires humility. Our culture often glorifies excess, bigger houses, newer cars, fancier lifestyles. Yet many of the wealthiest people quietly live below their means, avoiding debt traps that ensnare others. They choose peace over appearances. They understand that true freedom is not in owning more, but in owing less. History provides countless lessons. In ancient times, debt could literally enslave a person, forcing them into servitude until repayment. Today, while the chains are invisible, they are no less real. High-interest credit, ballooning mortgages, and predatory lending keep millions bound. But the principle remains the same. He who borrows carelessly becomes servant to the lender. The good news is that debt, unlike many storms, is within our control. We cannot stop illness, layoffs, or market crashes, but we can choose how much we borrow and how we repay. Every dollar of debt avoided is a dollar of freedom preserved. Every loan repaid is a weight lifted from the shoulders. When you tame the debt trap, you reclaim flexibility. You gain room to breathe, to redirect money towards savings, investments, or experiences that enrich life. Most importantly, you reduce vulnerability. For when the storm comes, and it always comes, you are not already sinking under a burden of obligations. With the first three shields, emergency funds, insurance, and diversification, you built defenses against external storms. By taming debt, you eliminate the internal cracks that could undermine everything. Yet there is one more piece to complete the fortress: the mindset of preparation. For no strategy, no tool, no shield is complete without the habit of looking forward. That is where we now turn. The power of preparing instead of repairing. Imagine standing at the base of a mountain. The sky is clear now, but you know storms could roll in at any moment. Some climbers charge ahead unprepared, convinced that their strength alone will carry them through. Others pack carefully: food, ropes, warm clothing, and maps. They are not pessimists. They are realists. They understand that preparation is not fear. It is wisdom. In personal finance, the same truth holds. Prepare, don't repair. Too many people live in a cycle of reaction. They wait until the car breaks down, the job disappears, or the illness arrives before thinking about what to do. By then, the choices are limited, often painful. Loans must be taken at high interest. Investments must be sold at a loss. Assets built over years must be liquidated in desperation. Repairing after the fact is always more costly than preparing ahead of time. Think about the difference between two families. The first, the Andersons, lived paycheck to paycheck, never setting aside savings, never buying insurance, always assuming tomorrow would look like today. When the father faced a sudden heart condition, the hospital bills crushed them. They scrambled, borrowing from friends, selling possessions, and falling behind on their mortgage. Each repair was frantic, and each left them weaker than before. The second family, the Garcias, faced a similar crisis. But because they had prepared, maintaining an emergency fund, health insurance, and a modest lifestyle, they endured the storm. It was still difficult, but they could focus on recovery instead of panic. They preserved their home, their dignity, and their long-term plans. Their preparation transformed the same event into a challenge rather than a catastrophe. Preparation is not about predicting the future. No one can foresee every twist and turn. It is about acknowledging uncertainty and building resilience. Just as a sailor cannot control the wind but can adjust the sails, so too can we adjust our finances to withstand whatever comes. This mindset requires shifting from short-term comfort to long-term stability. It means saying no to certain indulgences today in order to say yes to peace tomorrow. It means seeing beyond the next paycheck, the next vacation, the next gadget, and asking, what if? And am I ready? History shows us that the societies, businesses, and families that endure are those that prepare. In the Bible, the story of Joseph in Egypt illustrates this well. Foreseeing 7 years of famine after 7 years of abundance, Joseph stored grain during the good years. When famine arrived, Egypt survived and even prospered because of foresight. Had they lived only for the present, the nation would have collapsed. Preparation also requires humility. It is easy to believe that nothing will go wrong, that our health will always hold, our jobs will always last, and markets will always rise. But wisdom accepts human limits. It admits that we are vulnerable, and in that admission finds strength. So what does preparation look like in practice? It looks like budgeting carefully, saving regularly, reviewing insurance coverage, diversifying investments, and keeping debt under control. It looks like ongoing education, learning about personal finance, and staying aware of risks rather than ignoring them. It looks like living with a margin, not at the razor's edge. When you live with preparation, life changes. Stress diminishes, not because danger disappears, but because you know you are equipped. Opportunities open because you are not enslaved to constant crisis management. You can take risks, start ventures, or pursue dreams because your foundation is secure. Preparation, in truth, is freedom. And this brings us to the heart of financial risk management. It is not about fear. It is not about paranoia. It is about ensuring that the wealth you build is protected, that your loved ones are secure, and that your future is not at the mercy of chance. Preparation is an act of love for yourself, for your family, and for the generations who follow. As we close this journey, let us return to the truth we began with. Many appear wealthy on paper, but collapse in crisis because they never prepared. You now know the storms: illness, unemployment, failed investments, global crises. You know the shields, emergency funds, insurance, diversification. You know the hidden danger, debt, and you know the mindset that ties it all together. Prepare before, not after. So, let us end with this reminder. Managing financial risk is not about fear. It is about peace of mind. It is about building a fortress strong enough to withstand the storms of life, so that you can live not in constant worry, but in lasting freedom. Remember, the money you earn, save, and invest only holds real value if it is protected. Preparation is the key that transforms fragile wealth into durable security. The seeds you plant today, the shields you build now, will be the shelter your family rests under tomorrow. You cannot stop the storms, but you can prepare your house, your sails, your soul. And when the winds rise, you will stand, not trembling, not panicking, but steady, secure, and free. As we conclude this audiobook, let us step back and look at the whole picture. You have walked through the storms that threaten financial stability: illness, job loss, failed investments, and global crises. You have explored the shields that protect against them: the emergency fund, insurance, diversification, and the taming of debt. And you have embraced the mindset of preparation, the wisdom of building before the storm rather than repairing afterward. The heart of it all is this: financial risk management is not about living in fear. It is about living in freedom. It is not about waiting for disaster with dread, but about facing life with confidence. The storms will come. They always do. But when you are prepared, they do not destroy you. They test you, yes. They challenge you. But they also reveal the strength you have built. Remember this truth. The wealth you accumulate, whether small or great, only matters if it endures. A house without a foundation may look grand, but one storm brings it down. In the same way, wealth without protection is fragile, fleeting. But wealth with protection becomes a legacy, a gift that lasts. The actions you take today are acts of love. Every dollar saved in an emergency fund says to your family, "I am thinking of your safety." Every insurance policy maintained says, "I will not leave you vulnerable." Every investment diversified says, "I want our future to be steady, not fragile." Every debt repaid says, "I choose freedom over bondage." Preparation is not just a financial act, it is a moral one. As you finish listening, ask yourself, what one step can I take today toward preparation? Maybe it is opening a separate savings account for emergencies. Maybe it is reviewing your insurance coverage. Maybe it is setting up a plan to pay down debt. Do not wait for the perfect time. The storms will not wait. Begin now and build as you go. And let this final encouragement guide you. You cannot stop the wind, but you can set your sails. You cannot prevent the rain, but you can build your roof. You cannot silence the storm, but you can prepare your home. Financial risk management is not about avoiding life's challenges. It is about facing them with strength, dignity, and peace. So go forward with courage. Protect what you have built. Guard those you love. And live not in fear of what might happen, but in the confidence that whatever comes, you are ready.